Can I have your attention? We just want to continue with today's festivities to get you all out by 2 o'clock. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Shelley Dropkin. I'm the General Counsel, Corporate Governance at Citigroup, and I'm a member of the board and the executive committee of the New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. A few years ago, Dick Parsons gave the keynote speech at a conference of the Society of Corporate Secretaries. He told a story that, while I doubt I can do it justice, I wanted to share with all of you. At the time, Dick was the chairman and CEO of Time Warner. It was Oscar night, and Dick was in his car, headed to the Academy Award festivities. Because this is such a star-studded event, the photographers were at the ready to capture images of celebrities as they stepped onto the red carpet. As the cars arrived, an attendant would peer in and radio ahead to alert the paparazzi which star was about to emerge. When Dick's car pulled up, the attendant peered in and with great authority announced, "It's nobody." Nobody indeed. For the past year, Dick, who has been on Citigroup's board since 1996, has served as chairman of Citi, working tirelessly on our behalf to help us navigate the challenges we face, return to fiscal health, and become once again the most trusted and respected financial institution in the world. We at Citi are so grateful to you, Dick, for your continued leadership. Throughout his corporate career, Dick has recognized the power that corporations have to improve their communities and has motivated his leadership to do so. As chair and CEO of Time Warner, Dick knew its mission was to entertain, but also to enlighten, inform, and engage. When Dick was chairman and CEO of Dime Bancorp, the bank was awarded the highest ratings for its Community Reinvestment Act activities. Like many, or most of us here today, Dick is a lawyer who's been in government service and private practice. He was the managing partner of Patterson Belknap and served as counsel for Nelson Rockefeller and as a senior White House aide under President Gerald Ford. Dick has an extensive record of public service. In addition to serving on many not-for-profit boards, he's co-chairman of the Mayor's Commission on Economic Opportunity in New York, and chairman emeritus of the Partnership for New York City. Dick is committed to the goal of ensuring that there's a legal safety net and equal access to justice for everyone in our communities, because he believes that these are crucial to our social fabric and to economic advancement. This is a worthy goal shared by our colleagues at the New York Lawyers for the Public Interest, and all of you who are here today and who so generously support the work of the New York Lawyers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dick Parsons.
Good afternoon. There is an epilogue to that story that Shelley just told you. When that first happened, I had just become president of Time Warner. It was 1995, and so, people had an excuse for not having any idea who I was. Roll forward 14 years, when I went to my last Oscars. I'm still chairman of Time Warner. I've been chairman for, 8 years, something like that. And this time, they moved the venue, and instead of pulling up in front of one big red carpet, now what they had were lanes. There was a red lane, a yellow lane, and a green lane, and you got a pass. Your car had a little pass, which would assign what lane you were in, right? And obviously the red lane was for the big stars. The yellow lane was for the medium-sized stars, the yellow, and then the green was for whoever else was showing up. So we had a red pass, and we pulled up, and the guy looked in the car and he said, "How the hell did you guys get a red pass?" The more things change, right, the more they stay the same. Listen, I need to be somewhat brief here, although I could go on at some length about this particular award winner and to some extent about this organization. normally, I suspect in the height of my CEO-dom, when I was still a CEO of something here in New York, I probably had 100 either dinners or lunches in this room in a year. And there was sort of like a little inside joke, we all knew it. Always the people who were being honored, which even on occasion included myself, weren't really, I mean, some of them had no tangible relationship to the organization. I mean, we were all a bunch of frauds. And we were here for a free lunch, and because we could pack the house, that was the deal, right? You could pack the house. And it was very, very, very rare. I won't say it never happened, very rare, that you had honorees, an honoree or more than one honoree. In this case, you have two, and I know them both, who, in fact, deserve the recognition they're about to receive. One is Ted Wells, but it's going to be someone else's joy and honor, I think, to say a few words about Ted. Ted's a friend, but I can tell you he's the real deal. And one is Michael Helfer, who is, in addition to being my friend, in one capacity, me as chairman of city, my lawyer, very important. Michael is, in fact, the real deal. Michael has earned this recognition. Briefly, in terms of his background and history, Michael's been the general counsel of Citigroup, I guess since 2002, something like that, going on 8 years, and has been in the thick of it. I mean, I actually feel sorry for that guy because, you know, for 25 years before that, with one little detour in the insurance business, he was a distinguished lawyer with Wilma Cutler. In fact, he was the presiding partner of Wilma Cutler for a number of years, but was smart enough to get out of that job and just go back to being a distinguished lawyer. And then I think he sort of felt that he had arrived and was entitled to take a sinecure. So why not jump up to city and sit around, think big thoughts with the rest of the guys, and let the big machine roll on? Well, almost from the time he arrived, I mean, the thing went into, I'll just call it a hole, a very large hole, but a hole. And Michael has been organizing work parties and structuring virtually everybody's activity in terms of how we are climbing out of that hole, which we will. But he's like, he is our MVP as far as I'm concerned. And I wouldn't be doing, I'll tell you this, Michael, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if you weren't there. But let's talk about his involvement and activities on sort of the pro bono side. Shortly after arriving, Michael took efforts that Shelley and others who'd been there longer had been attempting to get off the ground and actually pushed them across the goal line and founded what is called, you know, the City Legal Pro Bono Initiative. It's now formalized. It works very closely with the New York Lawyers for Public Interest. It's a way that the legal resources and the talent that we have in our company, that works for our company, can also bring some of that talent and resource to bear for the broader community. And that happened because Michael made it happen. But he is not a new convert. I mean, this wasn't his first foray or exercise in the pro bono space. I mean, long before coming to New York, some 15 years ago, Michael was one of the founders of something called Lawyers for Children America, which represented, you know, sort of underserved and underrepresented youth who needed legal services. He is on the advisory committee of New York Legal Aid Society and on the Pro Bono Initiative. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. He is a real trooper and a real soldier in you know, sort of the trenches that many of you spend a lot of time in trying to do work for people who are the least of the brethren, who don't have the resources to reach out and bring quality legal assistance to their aid and who need it. And so, as I said, he is genuinely deserving of this honor, and it's a privilege to be asked to say a few words on his behalf. But before I get him up here, I want to say a few words on behalf of the New York Lawyers for Public Interest. You just heard from Shelley. I used to be the managing partner of a law firm here in town. I was the CEO of a bank. I was the CEO of a media company. And you have to think about, you know, how do I not only attract, but retain the kind of talent that I need to make my organization go. Those are very different kinds of organizations: law firms, banks, financial institutions, media companies. But there was one thing in common with all of them, and that was that People, why do you all show up for work every day? Well, A, we all need to make a living. But B, and I think this is really second in the pantheon, most of us, almost all of us, want to feel like we're doing something to make the world a better place. We're doing something for the collective good of the public weal. And sometimes that's not so easy in the confines of your business model and business activities. And organizations like the New York Lawyers for Public Interest give employers, like Citi, an opportunity to have their employees participate in something that makes them feel better about their employment, that makes them feel like they are, in fact, doing something for the public weal. And so Michael thanked all of you here for participating with New York Lawyers. On behalf of my colleagues at Citi, I'd like to thank the New York Lawyers for letting us be your partner in this, because it makes our employees feel like their employment is more meaningful, more impactful, and more rewarding. So with that, speaking of rewarding, here's a man who deserves Law and Society Award.
Thank you very much, Dick. They used to say there's one rule. The first rule of holes is if you're in a hole, stop digging. I'll tell you, based on my experience, the second rule of holes is if you're in a hole, make sure that some big guy like Dick Parsons, and there are very few like Dick Parsons, are in there with you. I'm very pleased to accept this award on behalf of the Citigroup Legal Department and the many colleagues of mine who have helped build and support our pro bono program. I want first to thank the New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. As many of you know and have experienced firsthand, NILP, which is what I'm told is the correct pronunciation, is a vital resource in our legal community, and NILP has been a tremendous partner in helping Citi achieve the pro bono successes we've had. I'd also like to congratulate Ted Wells. I'm in the unaccustomed position of appearing before Ted Wells speaks. My preferred and accustomed position is to stand behind Ted Wells when he goes into court and defends us. I'd like to thank Shelley Dropkin and David Goldberg, particularly from Citi, for all the work that they've done on the pro bono program. I'm very proud of the pro bono work that Citigroup lawyers have done over the last several years, from our work helping disaster victims after Hurricane Katrina to our work helping the homeless here in New York. But I am equally, if not more, proud that our lawyers have remained committed to pro bono work and our pro bono program through a very difficult period. The last few years have been a challenging time for many of us, for legal services and other nonprofits organizations that have had to fight for increasingly scarce support, for law firms that have had to rethink their business models, and Citigroup, well, you may have heard a thing or two about some of our issues. While there are signs the economy is improving, these continue to be very challenging times for many people, and it is precisely during these periods that our collective commitment to pro bono service is critical. I was reminded of this point a couple of weeks ago when I had the opportunity to meet and spend some time with the NILP staff. The scope of their work and the successes that they have had are impressive, as the video showed. But what really struck me is their dedication and fundamental commitment to pro bono service. These are extremely talented people who could pursue any number of careers, legal and otherwise, but they are completely dedicated to the pro bono clients they serve. Beyond the essential services they provide to their clients, the work of NILP and other legal service organizations is critical in helping other lawyers, like lawyers at Citi, provide pro bono service. These organizations are on the front line. They create opportunities for lawyers in firms and corporations to engage in pro bono service. On behalf of Citigroup and the lawyers at Citigroup, I accept this award. I'm very pleased to do so, and we will take it as a reminder of the challenges that we all face. Thank you.
If you will allow me, I would like to add my thanks to all of you for attending today and for supporting the incredible work of the New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. I would also like to thank our honorees and especially our co-chairs, many of whom are here today, for their terrific support of this event. For those of you who do not know me, although after the big head, you all know me, I guess, I am Chris Tabaz. It is my great pleasure to serve as the chair of the New York Lawyers Board of Directors. In a city as large and diverse as ours, New York Lawyers for the Public Interest is an organization like no other. You've already heard about some of the incredible work New York Lawyers does, but I think it bears repeating. Much of this work is critical work that no one else is doing, and it is work that improves the lives of thousands of our fellow New Yorkers. Quite honestly, what is so striking about the work done by New York Lawyers is that so much of it consists of incredibly important work that is simply not that obvious to most of us sitting in this room. The work done by New York Lawyers to ensure meaningful access to critical medication information at pharmacies for hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers who do not understand enough English to read a standard medication label. That work is nothing short of groundbreaking. The same can be said for New York Lawyers' successful efforts to ensure that city classrooms are free of toxic PCBs and that adults with mental disabilities are able to live in the supported, integrated settings to which they are entitled under law. It is said that when a community's basic standards are improved, it is not just those at the bottom that benefit, but all members of the community. For the raising of basic standards reflects the commitment of the entire community to the humanity and the dignity of each of its members, rich and poor alike. Viewed through this lens, we should all be thankful for New York Lawyers for the Public Interest, for in this regard, they better the community for the benefit of us all. Those of you who know me know that I can go on at great length about the work of New York Lawyers, but for those, especially those of you who want to get back to your offices this afternoon, I'm going to stop here. But before doing so, I would ask that you join me in two thank yous. First, I would ask you to join me in thanking the Board of Directors and the Executive Committee of the Board. We are extraordinarily fortunate to have a hardworking, dedicated, and highly engaged board. Without the efforts of our board members, today's event simply would not be possible. And to the Executive Committee, I owe a particular debt of gratitude. Over the past year, Michael Rothenberg and I have leaned heavily on the Executive Committee for wise counsel on all of the issues that you might imagine come up in steering a not-for-profit organization through what have been very challenging economic times. I have absolutely no doubt that New York Lawyers is the strong, vibrant organization that it is today, in part because of the extraordinary leadership of our board and executive committee. At this time, I would ask all of the members of our board and executive committee to stand and be recognized, and I would ask all of you to join me in giving them a very hearty round of applause. Next, on behalf of the board, I would like to thank the staff of New York Lawyers. Michael has already recognized them, so I will not ask them to stand again, but I want to be sure to offer the staff my sincere thanks and the thanks of the board. I wish I had time to recognize all of them individually. They all do different things. The lawyers and organizers lead litigation and advocacy efforts throughout the city and work with communities to help them realize their vision of who they want to be. Others leverage the energy and talents of lawyers throughout the city through the Pro Bono Clearinghouse, as you've heard today. The development team helps persuade all of you to give generously to support our work, and the administrative and intake staff help to make the organization run smoothly. Again, an effort that has been noted particularly over the very challenging last year. What all of these folks have in common, however, is that they bring to their work every day impressive amounts of passion, creativity, and smarts. They are the engine, the heart, and the soul of this great organization, and for that I offer sincere thanks. Now to present our next honoree, I would like to introduce Paul Roth. Paul is a founding partner of the firm of Schulte, Roth & Zabel. He heads the firm's investment management group, one of the firm's leading practices. Paul also has a history of commitment to public interest in pro bono matters. He is a member of the board of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund and a member of the board of the Citizens Committee for New York. I have it on good authority that Paul is a staunch supporter of Schulte Roth's notable pro bono efforts. One of his colleagues, one of his partners, told me that Paul likes to brag that one of the best decisions he has made at Schulte Roth was hiring their pro bono counsel, Danny Greenberg, and I'm sure that is true. With his support, the firm acts as outside general counsel for a number of not-for-profit organizations, including Sanctuary for Families and the Community Resource Exchange. And of particular note, in light of recent events, Schulte is especially proud to serve as pro bono counsel to Partners in Health, the largest provider of health care in Haiti. Paul, I turn the podium over to you.
Thank you. Ted, I want to thank you and say that I am honored that you have asked me to make this presentation to you. Ted has been a special friend of mine for over 20 years, and I know that many of you in this room are also proud that he is a friend of yours. He's a special lawyer. We know he's human, but he does win most of the time. Cabinet members, congressmen, senators, and some of our largest corporations, including Citigroup, Merck, Philip Morris, Johnson & Johnson, to name just a few, have all turned to Ted as their litigator of choice in high-stakes cases. As Chambers USA 2009 said about Ted, he is recognized by many as the greatest trial lawyer of our generation. He was National Law Journal's Lawyer of the Year in 2006, and 3 times, once in each of the last 3 decades, he's been profiled by the National Law Journal as a winner, a recognition bestowed on no other lawyer. I could go on listing Ted's honors and recognitions. Just Google him. I did. And you'll see article upon article featuring Ted, his cases, and his clients. And he takes all of this in his unassuming stride. But should you happen to find yourself in his office, you'll have a chance to read every one of those articles hanging on his wall. Instead of recounting Ted's honors, I'd rather talk about how I know Ted. I worked closely with him in a number of cases, so I speak from experience when I say he lives and breathes his cases. Like an athlete, he goes into training for each case as he develops a game plan for the defense. Some of you know Ted was a star football player at high school in Washington, D.C., and he actually had a football scholarship to attend Holy Cross. I cannot help thinking that any prosecutor seeing Ted across the table must feel he's up against a world-class blitz. The case we worked on first was Princeton Newport in the late 80s. It was then that I had met Ted, and we forged a bond and a friendship, which is a very special part of both of our lives. It was also then that I learned that Ted was not only an exceptional lawyer, but that he has a gift. For it's a gift to be able to make a jury like you, even root for you. He doesn't argue his case to the jury. He looks at the jurors and he talks to them. I invited one of my daughters down to the courthouse to hear Ted's summation in that case, so she could see a great lawyer in action. It was sometime later that I learned that the judge had invited one of his sons down to do the same thing. Today's award is granted to Ted for his commitment to social justice, and it is well-deserved. He has lived it. In 1969, Ted was 19 years old. It was a time of student protests. I hope you all remember that. And those of you who aren't old enough to remember, I'm sorry. You can read about it in the history books. There was one at Holy Cross organized by SDS. The organizers were suspended from school, and so were the 5 black students who participated, not as organizers, but merely as participants in the demonstration. None of the white students who participated were suspended. Ted argued to the school's judicial board that it could not suspend just the black students. He lost the argument, but he saw an injustice, and he would not walk away. He led all but one of the college's 65 black students in leaving Holy Cross, which they did until sanity prevailed. And with the assistance and apology of the college's president, amnesty was granted. Now just imagine what it meant in 1969 to these students and their families to pack up and leave the Holy Cross campus. A decade later, Holy Cross wisely decided they wanted Ted on its side, and since 1978, he's been a member of the Board of Trustees. In 1990, Ted was general counsel of the New Jersey NAACP. There were riots in Teaneck following the killing of a black teenager. Ted was asked by the governor to help defuse this tense situation. And because he was uniquely trusted by all sides, Ted was able to bring together the state prosecutors, the governor, the Reverend Al Sharpton, and bring the community together. Throughout his career, Ted's commitment to civil rights and civil liberties has never wavered. Since 2005, he has committed untold amounts of time and energy as the chair of the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund. And because of Ted, I joined the LDF board to work with my friend in his efforts to reinvigorate and unite this unique civil rights organization and reclaim its position as the premier voice in civil rights and civil liberties. Now, in the Wells family, you should know Ted has no monopoly on public service. His wife, Nina Mitchell Wells, who is sitting right there, Ted's sweetheart from high school, has just completed a 4-year term as Secretary of State of the state of New Jersey and is a member of Governor John Corzine's cabinet. I have no closer friend than Ted. Our families are close. We've traveled together. We love each other's kids. Besides his warmth, personality, and great smile, he has a presence, a physicality that, together with his remarkable empathy, gives such comfort to friends and clients alike. Those of you who are lucky enough to know him are inspired by him and feel protected by him. When Ted says, "I've got your back," you know he does. There is no man that I admire more. And so it is my great pleasure that I ask Ted to come up and receive today's award from the New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. Let me just read this inscription, which says, you got it backwards, New York Lawyers for the Public Interest Law and Society Award, Theodore V. Wells, Jr., in recognition of your dedication to the pursuit of social justice.
Thank you, Paul. It's funny, when I arrived at the hotel today around 11:30, and entered the lobby, I felt very young, energetic. And after listening to my good friend, Paul Roth, talk about events in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, 2000s, I feel like I need one of those cocktails, the Geritol from the old days and the Red Bull from today. But I will tell you that over the years, there's no question I've been a very lucky person. I met, for example, my wife of 38 years when I was 16 years old on a bus going to see a professional basketball game. We were on the bus, and there was football teams right after the season. And my guy who was the center of the team, he was dating my wife. And I was with another girl. But we were good friends, and I said, I kind of like your date, and he said he kind of liked mine. And we exchanged numbers, and I've been with her since I was 16 years old. And I will tell you, in terms of luck, there's no way I could have predicted at the age of 16 that my wife would have the type of social conscience that she does, that she would become a great lawyer, a corporate executive, serve in the governor's cabinet. But again, I've been lucky throughout my life. I've been lucky to be born in what I think are very special times. Almost from the time I started kindergarten. You talk about issues of social justice. The Brown v. Board of Education case really involves 5 school districts. One of the 5 was a school district in Washington, D.C., where I was born and raised. And until Brown, Washington, D.C. had a formerly segregated school system. And the decision was issued in May of '54. And I started kindergarten right after the decision. And unlike what happened in parts of the South, D.C., right after the first decision in Brown, decided to desegregate its school system. So I started kindergarten that September, right after Brown. And I wondered for a while why they kept changing the school districts. Because I went from one school to another school to another school, and what was going on? There was a lot of gerrymandering going on, people trying to circumvent Brown. But it sensitized me later on, because I started to read history as to what was going on, because I was just a little kid and really didn't have until later years an appreciation of what had taken place. But it sensitized me to the whole issue of social justice and what it is about. And to the extent I can play Dr. Phil for a minute, I'd like to say we could make various arguments about the need for lawyers to be involved in social justice endeavors and pro bono activities. We can make the argument that my friend Dick Parsons set forth, that it may help you recruit good people to your organization, people who don't want to just be involved in commercial activities. And that's a valid argument. It's important. And I can make the lawyers have a responsibility argument. You have an obligation because you are lawyers, not just to represent the rich and the powerful, but to spend time because of the unique privileges that you have as attorneys to represent the less fortunate. But I would say to you, in addition to those other reasons, you should be involved in social justice issues, because it will make you happier. It will make your life richer. You will probably get far more from it in terms of a sense of contentment and perspective on your own life than the people you represent. When about 15 years ago, I had a pro bono case. It involved a voting rights issue. And I went to a fellow lawyer and I asked him to help me on this pro bono case. We were going to challenge an election. And it was going to cost money because we needed to hire experts, and it was going to take time because we were going to have to try this case and overturn this election where we thought a certain group had been disenfranchised. And I'll never forget, the guy said to me, "Ted, I love you, but I'll give you my money, but not my time." I'll never forget, he said, "I'll give you my money, but not my time." And he gave me the money, and it helped me pay for expert witnesses. And we eventually won the case, and I invited him to the celebration we had. And he came up to me and pulled me over in a corner and he said, "Look, I want to say something to you. Thank you for inviting me." But he said as he watched the case progress, he felt a level of envy and regretment that he had not participated personally as opposed to just writing the check. And he said he thought he had made a major mistake because he recognized that the opportunity to participate in a case like that does not come up all the time. And he talked about his regrets in not signing up. And to the extent I have any message for the group today, be you young or old, it is that you should spend some of your time. I appreciate all the major firms that have written checks to the organization today, and that's very important. Money is a key part. I'm the chairman of the board of LDF, and every year I get up and at the beginning of the year, right after our major fundraiser, and think, how am I going to support for the next year our civil rights lawyers? And Michael and Chris, they do the same thing. But it is so fulfilling in terms of trying to live a life that is not just devoted, as much of what we do in New York, to representing commercial interests. I mean, I was lucky. When I got out of law school, I clerked for Judge John Gibbons on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. And that's really what brought me to the New York metropolitan area. His chambers were in Newark. I had never been to New Jersey in my life except to be on the turnpike. But I came to Newark because John Gibbons was viewed as one of the great federal judges in the country. And Gibbons used to talk a lot about the importance of being involved in pro bono activities, again, not because of an obligation, but because he thought it was part of living a full life, a richer life. And he talked about the benefits that I would get from it, that he got from it. And I remember in 2004, Gibbons, he had been retired for many years as the chief judge of the Third Circuit. And he had gone back to his old firm and was involved in doing nothing but civil rights pro bono work. And at the age of 79, he argued in the U.S. Supreme Court the case dealing with the Guantanamo detainees. And I talked to him the week before he argued the case, and he was so energized, he was so happy, because he was involved in dealing with a very complicated issue concerning our constitutional system of justice. And then I saw him last week, 84, 85, still smiling, still happy. He was on the Excella, going to D.C. I said, "Judge, where are you going?" "I'm going down to the Justice Department. I'm going to argue with Eric Holder about what they're doing in terms of these terrorism issues in Guantanamo. And again, I'm not just talking to the young people about it would be good for you, what you can do when you're young. This is a man, 84, 85 years old, energized. Same thing, applies to people who don't do litigation, for people who do corporate work. We had a very, very renowned tax lawyer at Paul Weiss, Bill DeWin. He died recently. He's one of the great tax lawyers of his generation. But when you talk to Bill DeWin, he would talk about how he used his skills as a tax lawyer to work with Thurgood Marshall when the senators from the South, right after the Brown v. Board of Education decision, were trying to take away the tax-exempt status of the NAACP, and how he and other lawyers at Paul Weiss designed a strategy to separate the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, which was Thurgood Marshall's law firm, from the NAACP, so that the tax exemption would survive, and how he worked for years thereafter with Thurgood Marshall. And he talked all the time about how that was the most valuable period of his life, irrespective of the many things he had done as a corporate counsel. I mean, if you look, for example, at the life of my good friend Bob Jaffe, who recently passed, who was a managing partner at Cravath, one of the great corporate litigators of his time, boardroom advisors, chief lawyer to Dick Parsons at Time Warner. But when you look at Bob's life, if you take the time to read his obituary in the New York Times, and I'll be candid, I read obituaries. I read biographies, but I read obituaries because I'm curious about how people have lived their lives. And I'm trying to see, is there a message or a lesson in the obituary that might give me some insight as to how to be a better person, how to improve my life. And when you read Bob Jaffe's obituary, you see not just a focus on his leading the Cravath firm or being a corporate litigator. The focus, in great part, was on his pro bono social justice activities, how he went to the Supreme Court representing some black firefighters, how he worked in another country trying to develop a legal system. And what I'm really saying to you all, again, is you should spend your money supporting organizations like New York Lawyers for the Public Interest, LDF, Brennan Center, Lawyers Committee. I mean, we have a group, and it's a tight group. But you should also give your time, because I guarantee you, you'll look back at some point in your life and you will feel like you are a better person, a more fulfilled person, because you took the time not just to represent commercial interests, you took the time to represent people who were underprivileged, not part of the system, but had rights under the system. And you'll get more from that, as I said, in many cases, than they will. Thank you very much.
And on that note, it is 2 o'clock exactly. Thank you all very much for coming. We'll see you all next year.